All right, welcome back to another episode of the Ricky Henderson of podcast, the greatest of all podcasts, the GOAP. I'm your host, Alex Espinoza, here on episode 53, Barry Zito's original jersey number. I'm here with John Shea, longtime writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. He was also on episode 29 last year, so check it out, ask him some more questions. But John, how's it going, man? Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Thank you. We're exhaling after the deadline, and we got Giants A's coming up, and it's these last 2 months. It's you thought one team was going to go somewhere and the other wasn't, but now it looks like maybe both teams won't go anywhere.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that. I mean, I want to talk about the A's and the Giants. I want to talk about your new book called Long Shot, Building Homes, Dreams, and Baseball Teams, which came out earlier this year. I thought it was a fantastic read. But yeah, I kind of want to start off by talking about the trade deadline because, the A's traded away Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino to the Yankees. They held on to Ramon, they held on to Sean Murphy. So we're kind of feeling, did you think that the A's were going to do more? Were you, what did you just think about them just making that one big move at the deadline?
I guess that was somewhat expected. I mean, it's tough to give up Sean Murphy. I mean, he's under team control and he's the heart of the team. Almost,
he's like the best
right?
player. Yeah,
he was a rookie last week, and now he's the veteran. And you just can't keep giving away everybody. You have to have 26 guys on the roster. Yeah. But Montas was going to go, and good for him. He's going into a good situation, and you got to credit the front office. They always put these players in good situations, don't they? I mean, what's Manaea doing? Oh my gosh, in San Diego, and
Chapman's having a great time in Toronto. Olson's at home in Atlanta,
back home. Bassett. They all go to winning situations, it seems, and they don't go to markets where there's not much of an upgrade over Oakland. So good for them, but also. These higher level teams maybe tend to have better prospects, and the Yankees have a decent, system. The Mets have a decent system, and to get all these prospects back, not the 25th best guy, but the 5th best guy, the 10th best guy, and 3 or 4 guys in their top 20. So that's not bad. It's not a top 3 or 4 guy, but it's a serviceable person who's going to help. And David Force keeps getting pitching, and say what you want about the A's, they're not awful on the mound. They're 22nd, 23rd in ERA and WHIP, and they do well. But this is more reinforcements. Their lineup needs total readjustments, but that's maybe coming at a date down the road.
Yeah, and also Lou Trevino too. I mean, he's from New Jersey. I think he's from New Jersey or Pennsylvania, but he's kind of like close by there, so he kind of gets to go back home. That's nice of him. But what do you think?
He needed to change the scenery more than anybody on the team, didn't he?
I think so. I mean, the A's gave him a really long leash. I mean, I think they just because 2018 he was lights out. He was amazing his rookie year, and then he would show those flashes. Even within an inning, he would show like, oh wow, that pitch is unhittable. But then he'd get drilled for throw a meatball right down the plate and get drilled. So. It was just like kind of nerve wracking. Like yesterday was the first game without him, and it was kind of like, oh, Lou Trevino's not running out there. It's kind of like a sense of relief almost, But
he would do well in the 4th or 5th inning, the trial balloon. Okay, let's try him in the 8th or 9th, and then that didn't work. Okay, let's give him a softer landing place. He seemed to do better in those situations, but it just wasn't working. And relievers are tricky. They're great one year, not so great the next. Yeah, and he could easily rebound next season.
Absolutely, yeah. What did you think about the haul they got? I mean, they went pretty pitcher heavy. They got 3 prospects who are pitching prospects, and they're already, like you said. I mean, Ken Waldichuk, he's checking in at number 3 in their organization. Right. Luis Medina is number 7. JP Sears is number 19, and then the second baseman they got Cooper Bowman. He's ranking 29 according to MLB.com on their prospects. So. And it sounds like Waldichuk and JP Sears are already knocking on the door of the big leagues, and Luis Medina's throwing 103. I mean, it seems like they got a pretty decent haul, right, for Frankie, and considering he's only under control for another year and a half.
Yeah, it's funny. Waldichuk goes from the Yankees' 5th best to the A's 3rd best. So what does that tell you about the systems? Hey, good for Oakland. They upgraded, and he's a strikeout guy. He's a future starter, maybe a rotation guy who could. Spend a few years in Oakland. He definitely needs to cut down on his walks. There's just too many. You can't walk 3-4 guys every 9 innings. And yeah, Medina and Sears, pitching depth, and then the one hitter, the infielder. But I guess it's as good as you can get. But you look at the haul that Luis Castillo got, with Seattle and Cincinnati in that big trade, and you think, well, I mean, Seattle is desperate, and they're going for it. The Yankees, we all know they're always going for it, but the market wasn't quite as good for Montas as it was for Luis Castillo. Similar service time, but Montas has the shoulder issue, and even though David Force said that wasn't a talking point, I mean, it had to be in.
I mean, yeah, it happened a month ago. Yeah, I mean, it just happened. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Waldichuk, I feel like just from what I mean, obviously I don't know anything about him. I just heard about him about a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago since the trade. But I mean, 6'4" lefty, I guess he has decent stuff. It sounds like he could be a rotation guy maybe as soon as next year if he has a good spring. And also he's a St. Mary's guy. I grew up in Moraga, so I didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and also I didn't realize Corbin Burns actually went there, the reigning National League Cy Young winner. I had no idea he was a Gale. And Tony Gonsolin too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, St. Mary's kind of an underrated program for supplying the major leagues with all this talent. But were you surprised Laureano didn't get moved? I figured because he is maybe closer to free agency than Murphy, he would be a good candidate.
Yeah, I thought him. I'm sure they took a lot of offers, but yeah, I was surprised they didn't move him. Actually, I don't know if I mean, they got to hold on to somebody, like you said, because they don't have anybody else in their outfield, really. Like, I mean, Seth Brown's all right, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, and he's probably not that expensive. I wonder when he's gonna actually hit free agency. I don't know how much how much time he has left, but yeah, I guess I was a little bit surprised. Yeah. I mean, but he's like right in their wheelhouse. He's only making $2.4 million this year for him. So, and
he's under not control. Having his greatest season.
Yeah, and he's under control.
Saw a much better version of Ramon.
Yeah, and he's still under control for a couple more years. So maybe it's kind of the same thing with Murphy. It's like, maybe we can still wait and maybe drive up his value a little bit more.
Hey, is Bob Melvin the happiest manager in the big leagues right now?
I think so. I was thinking that too. Once I saw the Juan Soto trade, that was my first thought. I was like, oh man, Bob must be so. I mean, he went from this situation to that where it's like they have endless pockets all of a sudden.
And this was supposed to be his final season in Oakland, but now he's got maybe the most dynamic team in baseball with Soto joining there. It's not all they got. They got like 33% of their lineup is new. But
yeah, Soto, Josh Bell's a hell of a player. Yeah,
Josh Bell. Yeah, and
Brandon Drury has 20 homers. I mean,
Padres are a must-watch team. I mean, you just have to follow that team every night now because Soto is just so fun to watch. His first game, he got a huge ovation in San Diego, which has never won a World Series, by the way. They've been to a couple.
Yeah.
Bochy had one, and then Dick Williams had one back in '84. But with Soto, all of a sudden, they're World Series candidates and legitimate ones at that.
Yeah,
it's not just the Dodgers or the Braves or the Mets or whatever. You got to count the Padres as a realistic, with their rotation, and they got a little deeper in the bullpen, but their lineup is suddenly maybe not Dodger-like, but certainly they can slug with them.
Yeah, and I mean, they added Josh Hader. I mean, and it's pretty amazing. The pitching, I feel like the pitching that they've added the past few years kind of gets thrown in the background too. But I mean, adding guys like Manaea, Yu Darvish, Clevenger, all these. I mean, these guys are studs, and I don't know how they keep on having this capital to keep bringing these guys back. It's pretty.
Well, AJ Preller has made a lot of moves over the years, and a lot of them have not worked. Yeah. I mean, he's won a couple of off seasons, but that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
But this time, man, it's like, oh my God, you get Soto. It's the biggest trade in years, maybe decades at the deadline. We'll see.
Yeah.
But this dude has, 3 playoff runs in him with the Padres. He's not a free agent until after 24. And the kid's 23 years old.
It's wild. Yeah.
He batted second in his first game. He walked, and one grand slam later, the game is over in the first inning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what's crazy. He's only 23. He looks to me like he's 30 years old already. I
Right.
can't believe that dude's 23. It's wild.
The confidence and the mindset and the intelligence. He's got it all. I mean,
It's kind of like Miguel
a
Cabrera.
five-tool talent. He's Barry Bonds, but the Giants didn't get Bonds till his late 20s when he was a free agent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what's. I mean, yeah, he's just so young because he could do this for another, 15 years as far as we know. I mean, it's wild, and the athletes are getting stronger. Like, I also wanted to talk about the Giants too because I saw a lot of tweets the past couple of days. Saw a lot of Giants fans complaining, "Oh no, we're becoming the A's 2.0." I don't know. Do you feel like there's any truth to that? I mean, obviously their payroll is so. So I was looking there. They're the fifth most valuable franchise. They're worth 3.5 billion, but they have the 13th biggest payroll at about 157 million. Do you feel like they need to get into that top 5 spending stratosphere to compete with? I mean, especially now that the Padres got all these stars.
Well, they need to. They can't have a payroll this low with that revenue. And they're building up Lot A over there to have their new ballpark village, which we see in Denver, which we see in Atlanta, which we see in St. Louis and Boston and all these cities. A ton of revenue, which the A's are trying to do there out at the terminal, but it just doesn't add up. They traded Ruff, they traded Casali, they didn't trade Rodon. Or
Jock. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Or Jock. Yeah, Jock has a concussion and he hasn't hit a home run since June, but I wasn't surprised there. But with Rodon, that was kind of a stunner. I mean, you could have gotten an A's-like deal, 3 or 4 prospects that are going to help you. Well, he's going to walk after the season.
Yeah.
He has an opt-out clause, and his agent is Scott Boras. He's not going to stick around for the same amount of money he signed for last offseason. He's just not going to do it.
He's probably in line for like a 9-figure deal, right? He's probably going to get like maybe 4 years, 100 million, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? Something like that, you think?
Right. I mean, he's having a fantastic season. He's a strikeout king. And right before the deadline, he threw 7 scoreless and punched out double figures. So,
and he's a lefty too. I
have a feeling that the Giants are so streaky. They'll win 7-9, they'll lose 7-9. So I don't think Farhan Zaidi was all in on dealing Rodon like the A's were with Montas. We knew in February and March that Montas was going to be gone at the deadline. But with Rodon, the Giants never knew who they were, and they still don't know who they are. They're a sub-500 team, but a couple of months ago, they were 10 games over. They were right in it. And every day, they've had 2 big losses since the deadline. And but anyway, it wasn't a great deadline for Farhan Zaidi because they could have gotten more. They got rid of 2 older guys in Casali and Ruff who were in their mid-30s. Okay, and they got some prospects and J.D. Davis and Zapuki who could help them this season. But overall, it wasn't the haul that I think a lot of Giant fans expected, and they're kind of hard on the team right now.
I'm on social media for 95.7. I see all the Giants fans. They're not happy right now with Farhan at all, or just the general. I mean, it's only social media, but from what I've heard, what I've seen.
Folks on social media, they buy tickets and they drink beer and eat hot dogs. They park, so they are part of the cash cow the Giants generate. And it's not a very exciting team. It's not a team that is a must-watch team right now. They're flawed. They have base running mistakes. They have defensive miscues. Their offense is so inconsistent. They don't have that Soto in there. Here's a stat for you. If they got Soto, they would have been who they've been ever since they came to San Francisco. Since they came to San Francisco, the names they've had from Willie Mays to Jack Clark to Will Clark to Barry Bonds and to Buster Posey. This is only the 6th season in their San Francisco history that none of those guys suited up. So they always had a star. They've always had a guy in the middle of the lineup, not just to lead, but to make everyone better, to to worry the other team. Now there's not that guy in the middle of the lineup that any pitcher is really concerned about.
Yeah.
And even Posey last year, he was very good. Everybody was good with 107 wins.
Yeah.
But it's pretty unbelievable. They've always had that guy. And now they don't have that guy. And the fan base said, get Soto, give up Harrison, give up Luciano. Obviously, they weren't giving up as much as the Padres were willing to give up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I saw Farhan's quotes. He said, we talked to them, but they went with another package. It didn't sound like the Giants were ever really that close with them. I think they put in the obligatory offer, but it doesn't sound like anything really materialized there. But I mean, yeah, like you said with Farhan, they traded away and also even the injured players that they hadn't seen yet, Matt Boyd and Trevor Rosenthal. I feel like, those moves, they didn't make the team. He didn't make the team better in 22. If anything, he made them worse. And that's why it perplexes me that he kept Rodon, but it's like he kind of chipped away at the sides. It's like he kind of went halfway in the middle. It's kind of weird. It's like you either got to go all in or you got to go all out. And he kind of I feel like they're just kind of stuck in the middle right now. I mean, they're 5.5 back with the third wild card, 9 back of San Diego, 20.5 back of LA. So it looks like their only chance is probably the third wild card at this point. And these moves didn't make you better in 22. So that's what it kind of shocked me.
Yeah, and
it makes sense to me.
If they were looking for the same haul that the A's got for Montas, and especially, the Seattle got for Castillo, then it was probably somewhat misguided because those guys are still under team control next year.
Yeah. And
Rodon wouldn't be. So it's a 2-month rental.
Yeah.
So you're not going to, the Giants got Chris Bryant last year, a 2-month rental. So they didn't give up the farm. They didn't give up all their top guys. But I think they were maybe looking for more than teams were willing to give up for Rodon. I mean, who wouldn't want a Rodon in the rotation in the final 2 months? But it was stunning that there wasn't that offer that kind of wowed Zaidi and said, okay, we're done. But on the other hand, ownership is putting pressure on them. Fans are putting pressure on them to win now. There's always been that feeling to win now. So yeah, it's a bad place to be because you can't step back like the A's do every few years and rebuild. This one a lot more so than any other we've seen, unfortunately for A's fans. But it's a tough place to be in, right in the middle. Where are we selling? Are we buying? And you never get that feeling that they're doing either. Are they doing both? Are they doing one? Are they doing the other? And this is 4 straight trade deadlines for Farhan. And the first one, they kept Bumgarner, they kept Will Smith, they got rid of 3 relievers, and then 2020 was kind of a wash, a mulligan. It was the pandemic, a 2-month season. And then last year, on their way to 107, they picked up Chris Bryant. So this was Giants really at a crossroads, and Farhan was on the spot. So I don't think anyone who sends out those grades gave him an A or a B. C at best. But I don't think the team is better now. And I'm not sure if the team is going to be better next year as a result of this. We'll see. Yeah. But the A's are always planning and scoping and strategizing because they always know what they're doing. It's always about next year. Last year was about last year was great. Bean and Forrest, they picked up a nice load. Unfortunately,
Chafin and stuff.
They just melted down in the final 2 months, unfortunately. But they were a very good team in Bob Melvin's final year. They were contending into August for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like the A's, I'm cautiously optimistic, like you said, about their pitching for next year because, we talked about the rotation, but also their bullpen too. I mean, these guys that they pulled out this year have been incredible. Most of these guys didn't have any experience. Yeah. Sam Moll, Domingo Acevedo, Zach Jackson, Danny Jimenez. And then AJ Puck was always trying to find his way, but he kind of turned it around. But those that's like the core of your bullpen. Those are 5 solid guys you can rely on who are going to be here next year. So I feel like the A's I feel like there's some cautious optimism for 2023, especially obviously their lineup needs a lot of help, but Yeah, I feel like their pitching is probably going to keep them in some games. I think we're already seeing it this year. You know that they've been playing really well the last month or so, ever since July. So I think they've honestly been the more entertaining team than the Giants the past 5 weeks or so. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
guess who had the better July? The A's were 14-12.
Yeah.
The Giants were 11-17.
Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty. I mean, yeah, it's pretty wild how it's changed. I mean, and also with the A's too, the expectations are so low. It's like anytime they get a win, it's like, oh, that was great. Like last night was a great win for them. They beat Ohtani. Caprillion kind of outdueled them, and it's like, wow, like the A's are they're not laying down. That's for sure. You know, yeah. So I want to get into your book too. Again, it's called Long Shot: Building Homes, Dreams, and Baseball Teams. Highly recommend it for any Bay Area sports fan, not even just A's fans, because it touches so many different areas of the Bay Area sports. And I'm just curious, how long did that take you to write? Like how many people did you interview? When did this whole process start? Because it seems like it's a great undertaking, you know?
Well, it probably took a couple of years. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is, par for the course. I can't imagine people say, I asked, how long did that take? They say, 6 months, 9 months. I said, really?
Yeah, you're like,
you write a book so fast.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't interview 100 different people like I did for the book, and probably 50 sessions with Steve Schott. So it's basically the inner workings of an ownership group.
Yeah.
That has never really been told. I never found any book that had first person account by a baseball owner since like Bill Veeck, Branch Rickey. I mean, that's decades and decades.
Yeah, those guys are legends. Yeah, those guys
are legends. They're marketing people and baseball people, but they did have stake in ownership. Steve Schott, he's a local guy from Santa Clara. He played ball at Bellarmine. He was a very good pitcher at both Bellarmine and Santa Clara as a D1 pitcher. He was in a division with USC, UCLA, Cal, and Stanford. Along with their conference, St. Mary's, USF.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he was a player, huh? Yeah.
He was a very good pitcher. He went to the NCAAs as a junior, and he was a pro-ace on that team. He was San Jose Mercury pitcher and player of the year his senior year in high school. So yeah, he's a very good athlete. But so it's a different take. You see a lot of owners maybe who didn't play ball and who inherited their money. And Steve Schott was neither. He played ball and made his own money because he had $500 to his name when he got married, and 40,000 homes later in and around the Silicon Valley, he made his fortune and bought a baseball team and conducted it like a business. He's not a guy who was as popular as the Mr. Haas.
That's like an impossible act to follow, right? They were beloved. Everybody loved them, right? I mean,
the first week he showed up, he said, "Okay, every department give me your budget."
I thought that was shocking. Yeah, yeah.
And everyone said, "What do you mean budget? There are no budgets." What do you mean there are no budgets?
Like I was thinking like this is the early 90s, not like the 70s or something. It's like like things were kind of together by then. It's kind of crazy. You would think that. When you're running like $100 million, tens of millions of dollars business, there would be budgets involved. So I thought that was shocking. Like just the massive shift in culture. It seems like he brought, right? Because he seems like he's very buttoned down, no nonsense, just kind of, just cut and dry. And then it seemed like Haas was just kind of, do whatever you guys want, free willy nilly. Let's do whatever.
Hey, we need some money. Okay, here's a check. Hey, we need some money. Okay, here's a check.
Yeah, completely different thing.
It's
right?
It's not the business prototype of, today's era. And so the home builder came in and he kind of pushed for restrictions and guidelines, and Billy Beane was just coming up, and Steve Schott encouraged Sandy Alderson, hey, if he's that good, promote him. So Billy became the GM under Steve Schott's watch and brought in Paul DePodesta, who, by the way, wrote an amazing foreword to this book.
Yeah, that was great.
This is the Paul DePodesta that
not Jonah Hill.
In the headlines.
Not Jonah Hill.
In the movie, he didn't want his name attached. So Jonah Hill was Peter Brand. So Paul DePodesta was Peter Brand, but nobody knew that it was Paul DePodesta.
Yeah.
But, Paul went on to work for the Dodgers and the Mets and other teams, and now he's running a NFL team. But he agreed to do this forward, and his theme in the forward was that Steve Schott gave Billy Beane and I, the guidelines from which to build a roster, construct a roster, and from that box, Paul and Billy had to A, be creative, and B, act like owners. So, thus Moneyball. I mean, from Steve Schott's budgets, which were implemented for the first time, came Moneyball. So, the guidelines and restrictions and budgets and payroll forced Paul and Billy to act like maybe no other front office ever did, in terms of empowering themselves to maybe draw up the lineup and pre-plan the bullpen for that day. And now every team does it, right? Maybe minus Dusty Baker, maybe minus. I mean, even Dusty and Buck Showalter, they still listen to all their guys, maybe more than they did during their previous 10 years as managers. But now you see pretty much every other team doing what the A's did in the late 90s. And the two first years were really rough, and then they went to the playoffs 4 years. Overall, they contended for 6 straight years. So it's a situation where a lot developed in that time. A lot of the game was changed, and Billy Beane and Paul DePodesta and Miguel Tejada and all the managers from La Russa to Howe to Maka, they're all quoted in this book. They're all part of the book.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stories behind the scenes that really haven't come out until now. And one of them includes Joe Lacob, who was this close to buying the team from Steve Schott, and Bud Selig gave it to Lou Wolf and John Fisher, and look where the team is now. And there's a Joe Lacob chapter in there in which Joe explains that Bud Selig kind of yanked it from him. He was this close. He had an agreement with Steve Schott to buy the team for $180 million. And the lesson learned for Lacob was, well, shoot, I don't know these people. They don't know me. So if I'm ever going to own a team, I'm going to have to know who these people are and befriend them and hobnob with them and network with them. So he bought in to the Boston Celtics, his hometown team. And when the Warriors came up in 2010, instead of the A's for $180 million, he bought the Warriors for $450 million, and now they're worth about $6 billion.
Yeah, it's I saw a graphic recently. They're the 4th most valuable franchise in America now, which is wild to me. Yeah. It's
amazing, all those lean years in the 90s and early 2000s, and A's fans are saying, wait a minute, we could have had Joe Lacob. And Lacob says, I would have had a stadium by now. I would have paid for all the infrastructure.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you think he really would have paid $300 or $400 million out of his pocket, or at least found the investment, found the funding? Do you feel like he would have been able to do that if that's what it would have cost?
Yeah, for two reasons. It would have hurried up the project, A, and B, you saw what he did with Chase Arena.
Yeah, I mean, they expedited that thing. They got that
for
thing
California
done.
To get that done that quickly. That was pretty amazing, and
and they shifted 2 sites. I mean, they went to Pier 31, 32, and then they went over there. I mean, it's like it's amazing. Like they did all of that in 7 years, and here the A's are 22 years later doing the same thing.
And 17 years ago, Joe Lacob thought he had a deal to buy the A's, and he said he would have. He said he was kind of the guy who introduced John Fisher to Howard Terminal. Because they used to go to lunch, they're buddies. They used to go to lunch
Fisher used to poo-poo the idea, right? He said he didn't.
And then softened to it later. But now, Joe Lacob says he would have to revisit the Coliseum with the Raiders and Warriors gone. It's centrally located. You got the freeways, you got the airport, you got BART. None of that stuff is out near Howard Terminal. Dave Cavell and John Fisher say, well, we have to keep up with the Joneses. The Giants have their waterside facility. We have to have one that's maybe better. We can't compete at the Coliseum site. Very debatable. I mean, who are you going to listen to? John Fisher, who doesn't know much about construction, or Steve Schott, who knows everything about construction and says the Coliseum site is better. Joe Lacob, who obviously knows about construction after Chase Center, and he would be open to the Coliseum site. And territorial rights are addressed in the book. And
yeah, I thought that was pretty shocking. I mean, I thought a couple things, like the fact that the Raiders screwed over the A's. It seems like the city of Oakland and the Raiders, that the way that whole wheel, that just the timing of everything it went down. It's like, what was it? It was like I think in January '95, it was like Schott had the agreement, and then in June, Oakland goes around his back and brings the Raiders, and then in November he finally closes. But by then it's like, oh man. And he said if he knew the Raiders were coming to town, he wouldn't even have bought the team. So I thought that was kind of different too. That could have changed everything, you know?
Yeah, pretty powerful stuff. And they went to him. They recruited him. He didn't say, "Hey, I want the A's." They came to him because he had a history of A, having a lot of money, and B, being a sports guy. He was the lead person when Oakland tried to get an expansion NFL team after the Raiders moved to LA.
Yeah, I saw that.
He attended owner meetings, and Carmen Policy was in charge of the finance committee and helped oversee expansion, and he wasn't wanting to have a second team. He was DeBartolo's right-hand man.
Yeah.
He didn't want a second team in the Bay Area, but so that wasn't going to happen. They gave it an honest effort, but the whole territorial rights, Jerry Reinsdorf in the book, the White Sox owner, who was a good friend of Bud Selig and was sort of, everything Bud wanted, Reinsdorf wanted in terms of the CBAs and everything back in the day, and the whole, strike of 94 and 95, which also preceded the Schott ownership. So Reinsdorf says in the book that he disagrees with Selig then and Manfred now, that there are territorial rights that are realistic, that the A's should have every right to go to San Jose or Santa Clara. Schott wanted to go to Santa Clara. Wolf wanted to go to San Jose. And it's like Ignacio de la Fuente, who was on the city council and bigwig in Oakland, politics over the years, just says the Coliseum is the only place to go. He said, we looked at 7 different sites, and Howard Terminal was the worst possible site back then. And, he's convinced that current ownership, pursued this site knowing it would fail. So there's a lot of stuff in the book that really hasn't come out, but it's kind of nice to present all these facts that maybe leave people scratching their head. The greatest what if in Bay Area sports history, right?
Yeah, and another thing that really makes me scratch my head too was the fact that Schott said, in the late '90s, he was willing to commit $50 million to renovating the stadium, and in hopes that the city and county would match. So that's like $100 million in the late '90s to the Coliseum, which I would assume would completely transform it. Probably because I look down at Dodger Stadium and I see it's pretty much built around the same time as the Coliseum, but it doesn't have such a bad rap. I think they've been able to, kind of expand it and make it more modern. And I'm just thinking, why couldn't the A's have a Dodger Stadium North kind of thing? Obviously, it's the same kind of era. Maybe if they refurbished it in the '90s, that's what they would be looking at. You still have the view of the Oakland Hills. Yep. But it really just comes down to Mount Davis just kind of screwed up everything, it sounds like,
And maybe a better comp is Anaheim Stadium, because they both opened, the Coliseum and Anaheim Stadium right around the same time.
Yeah.
And look at Anaheim and look at Oakland right now. Yeah. Anaheim refurbished, rebuilt, reconstructed, and Schott was willing to do that, but he pulled everything back once they started jackhammering out there in center field, and the thing kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the A's had to open in Las Vegas at Cashman Field, this little tiny stadium, minor league outfit, and it's a major league team.
I remember that as a kid. I was like, why are they playing in Las Vegas? Cashman Field. I was like, what is that?
Yeah. So there are a lot of forces against the new ownership coming in, and everybody loved the Haas family. Nobody liked the new ownership, and they got rid of La Russa, and good for Tony because he went to St. Louis and won a couple of titles, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. They got rid of Lon Simmons, and the backstory of that isn't what actually came out at the time. Schott fires Simmons. I mean, this was a popular broadcaster who
he's a legend.
Was a legendary duo. One of the best ever in any market. Bill King and Lon Simmons. So
it seemed like there were some communication issues with Schott, right? I don't know. It just seemed like maybe like even the call he had with the Raiders. I think he said Eddie Alvarez. He was like, "Oh yeah, they wanted to see, but really they were getting his blessing, and he didn't realize it," kind of a thing, right? And
well, Lon Simmons actually came out. I read in a Chronicle story before that season saying, I would like to push back a little bit. I don't need to do 162, and that's exactly what Steve Schott was hoping for.
Yeah,
maybe working some new guys, but Bill would be all 162 and Lon would be part-time, and that's the suggestion that he wanted Ed Alvarez to tell Lon. But Ed Alvarez, as the book says, left a voicemail for Lon saying, "We're moving in a new direction," which means you're out of here. And Lon took it "I'm fired," and all the stories said Schott fired Simmons, but in reality Schott wanted Lon to just maybe step back. He still wanted him in the broadcast booth, but Ed Alvarez kind of screwed it up. There's a total miscommunication. So eventually, Steve Schott hires, our good friend Sam Spear, who, is in the baseball circuit, horse racing. You heard him on the radio all the time. Unfortunately, we lost Sam during the process of putting this project together. I dedicated the book to Sam Spear, and he was kind of influential in the genesis of this book, getting me and Steve together on the same page and working toward the completion. And he would have been real proud how it turned out. But Steve hired Sam to be like his wingman, his right-hand man, a guy who could help him get through these press conferences and PR moves and kind of help his image. And that's what Sam did.
Because I remember, Steve, that you mentioned like his first press conference, he said something he shouldn't have said. He's like, "Whoa, I'm not prepared for this." He wasn't really ready for that aspect of it, right?
Yeah, he kind of badmouths Terry Steinbach. Why is he making that much money for that batting average? And he grew up in the Bay Area when there's no Major League Baseball. He was a big fan of the Seals, the Pacific Coast League Seals, all the way through 57 until the Giants showed up in 58. Yeah. So his team was the Yankees, and Yogi Berra was the catcher, and Yogi Berra won all these rings and was a great hitter, great ball player. And he apologized to Terry Steinbach. He was trying to make a point about salaries. And, he was coming into a new situation, and he never went to baseball ownership 101.
Yeah, or media training or anything like that, right?
When he put up a new house or a new hotel or a new building, there's never a press conference with guys asking, why there are that many floors and how come there was, the bathroom so small and paying for this. And, he just put it up and handed a press release to the newspapers. If they ran something, they would. But in baseball, you have to be accountable and you have to be the front guy. I mean, we have not heard John Fisher once say anything about anyone or. But Schott tried to be somewhat accountable, and his co-owner Ken Hoffman was like Fisher, never said anything. So it was Schott who was the front guy, as the managing general partner, even though it was a 50-50 split. He was the guy who went to the owners' meetings and made the decisions and went through the budgets and set the payroll. And he didn't get a whole lot of positive pub, obviously, because he followed the Haas family and all these forces against him with the Coliseum and right after the strike, and the farm system wasn't great. Who's the new manager and why are you trying to trade McGuire and Steinbach? So, that era was going away, that championship era with La Russa and all, and they're trying to at the old, he's an old pitcher and wanted new guys. He said every Sunday I went to the game and Van Poppel was out there getting ripped.
Yeah.
But why do we got Van Poppel? And Sandy explained to him, well, he's got a minor league contract. He's out of options. So it was a kind of a rude awakening. So what do you mean he's out of options? So eventually they traded him and got some new prospects and blood. And they turned the corner, and obviously with Giambi and Tejada and the big three of the pitching staff, and went to the postseason 4 times, went to Game 5 of the division series 4 times, and lost them every time. And you're thinking, guys, a couple of those, if they got by, these are World Series teams, 01 and
Yeah, 01 and 02, those teams were amazing.
oh
Those
my
teams were so
gosh,
good.
yeah,
Yeah. Those teams
yeah,
were
with
so
or
good.
without Giambi.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so when this was happening in real time, was there the perception that, oh, Steve Schott is a cheap owner? What was like the real time perception in the late 90s, early 2000s when he was, because I was born in 87. I wasn't really fully aware of what was happening, but what was kind of the perception while he was the owner from 95 to 05, like while it was happening?
I mean, he'll be the first one to say that, he was classified as a cheapskate.
Yeah.
But he tried to justify it by saying he'll also say who's the what's the biggest contract in A's franchise history? Well, it's Eric Chavez in 04, and I'm the one who okayed 66 million over 6 years. And the A's under this ownership haven't done anything.
He took a couple of little sneaky digs at Fisher there for sure. I noticed that. That made the book. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got some life to it. It's got a little juice, and he's wondering why this ownership doesn't spend more. I mean, he spent more, relatively speaking, than this ownership group.
And that was 18 years ago.
And he wonders why they want to build out there. He's a supreme guy in terms of home building and construction, and he says that there's too many obstacles out at Howard Terminal. It just doesn't make any sense to him. But yeah, there are a lot of obstacles for him when he came in, and all the media at the time, and I was there. It was real easy to compare Haas and Schott. Haas, the free spender. He had the highest payroll one year. But Dave Feldman, who, like we all know, and he's the A's official scorekeeper. He works in production.
It's like a historian at this point, right? Yeah.
And he's like a great A's historian. As he says in the book, the A's were number one in payroll one year, but the second place team was like 500,000 or 750,000 below, and you had like 5 or 6 teams within $1 million or $2 million of the top spot. Now the number one is like way up there, 100 million, 150 million more than a lot of teams on the lower end. So that was also right before local networks, regional networks started popping up in New York and LA and Chicago, and suddenly there was a secondary stream of money that teams were generating that Oakland wasn't. So that was another reason they suddenly were long shots, were underdogs. Name of the title, long shots. So anyway, so there's a whole lot, and he admits his mistakes. He admits that things should have been better, from Steinbach to Lon Simmons to the things he said to the things that happened, and the hiring of Sam Spear was a result of that. But in the end, Steve Schott has the highest winning percentage of any A's owner in history, going back to Philadelphia and Kansas City.
Interesting.
So it's a different story. And, it was a pleasure tonight telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's funny because I feel like that era was a very successful era, but it's almost kind of that ownership group is kind of forgotten. On people obviously talk about the Haas's, people talk about the Fishers, but like Steve Schott, that Steve Schott and Ken Hoffman kind of gets lost in the mix a lot of the time. So I thought it was really interesting. And I really part 4 of the book was really interesting for me. The Moneyball years, just really diving into that, kind of behind the scenes. Seemed like there's always kind of some infighting at the end of the year because in 2001 it was I think it was Art Howe and Billy Beane got into it about. Billy Beane just said, no, you're going to put Johnny Damon in center field or something, or T-Long. I forget which one. I think he wanted Johnny Damon. And then in 2002, Billy Beane and Steve Schott got into it after they lost to the Twins. So it was interesting. And everybody hated that movie Moneyball. It sounds like Art Howe called it a disgrace. I thought that was really interesting stuff. I mean, especially those years, it seemed like there was tension because they knew they had something good, but they just couldn't get past that first round,
Yeah. And Paul DePodesta in his forward looks back and said, we didn't know in real time at the time that this would be an era that people would look back on fondly and say, that's the genesis of what baseball is all about now. We were just looking at every inning, every game, every week, to try to win with what we had and try to think outside the box and bring in Scott Hatteberg.
Yeah.
And Paul says that he wrote in his forward, I can just imagine that conversation, Billy going to Steve Scott, says, yeah, we lost Giambi, but we got this guy Hatteberg who's filling in for him. and to have Schott sign off on it, you got to really be all in on what we're thinking. And there was a lot of conflict. Steve Schott did not buy in on a lot of the things Billy Beane did. He really liked Howe. He really liked Maka. And he kind of felt for them because Billy was kind of overpowering and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And this isn't just old school managing anymore. We're going to have a say in the lineup and how, the rotation and the bullpen is going to be used. And Art Howe fought back. Maka fought back. And while Schott kind of felt for them, he didn't say, Billy, you got to change your ways because they were winning. How do you argue with what Billy Beane and Paul DePodesta are doing? Winning.
If you're winning 100 games a year,
any team in baseball, they're winning as much as the Yankees. And they're getting 50,000 at the ballpark when the Yankees come in, by the way, because they open up Mount Davis. They didn't have those tarps under this Schott era because they often sold tickets up there. I mean, attendance actually was better a couple of years into his ownership than it was, at the end of the Haas family ownership. And the minor league system obviously was better because all the homegrown talent is what won those, won the day in those playoff runs. So, it was a different time. And there was one time you mentioned in the 5-game loss to Minnesota in the division series.
Yeah.
Schott it happens every year. What's going on? He was ticked off. He went down to the clubhouse, called a meeting for the next day with the coaches and the manager and the front office, and was upset and say, why is this happening? And kind of laid into everybody. And Billy Beane got in his face and said, don't you come down here and knock my guys, knock my manager, knock my coaches. And Steve got up and left, but there was a lot of friction in the room, a lot of yelling. And so I talked to everybody in the room from Howe, who was the manager for the final time, to Maka, the incoming manager, to Ron Washington, who was a coach, to Paul DePodesta, to Billy Beane, to Steve Schott. All these people were in the room and they all explained, they all gave their colorful version.
Yeah.
This outburst by the owner and the GM. And the fact is, Steve was like a fan. He wanted to win. He got upset when they lost, but so did everybody else in the room. I mean, they were getting tired of these 5-game losses in the division series. What aren't we doing? I mean, what can we do better? There's some base running problems and, some pitching issues in the end, and
Jeter flip.
They just didn't get it done. But they would be up 2 games to love, or they'd be up 2-1, and
that was heartbreaking for me as a kid, man. Those were rough. Those were rough when I was 13, 14-year-old A's fan. That was rough for me, man. Yeah. Yeah. And I also thought like a big thing of that was they came across some sort of analytics software in the late 90s that they tried to buy and like own it, but it kind of got other teams had it, so it was too late. But I was like, so they were on the cutting edge of this analytics thing, Now it's so pervasive, it's everywhere. But they were really at the forefront of that, in the mid 90s.
They had this. They got hip to this software, and they presented it to Steve Schott and said, hey, we'd like to implement this. And Schott just said, this is another example of him saying, and they called me cheapskate. He wanted to buy all the software. He just wanted to purchase it. So Billy and Paul went to the company and said, hey, can we buy it? And at that time, a couple of other teams were in on it. And I think they were making more money, just servicing all these other teams instead of just giving it all to Oakland. But that's how determined the A's were to get like exclusive control of this program. And now all teams have access to everything. Yeah. But at the time, with technology entering the game and computer software entering the game and statistics that we've never seen entering the game, the A's were at the forefront of that and sort of created what we see in the game today. But Schott wanted to buy it and was turned down. Would have been quite costly.
Mhm.
But so they were able to use it for a few more years and then get new software. And I mean, now about every player in A ball and double A and triple A, not just the opponents. Who they. So the scouting is so much different because of technology and because of real-time access to what other players around baseball are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing before we get into a quick little Bay Bridge series preview, but I just thought it was interesting how Bud Selig really kind of stifled a lot of stuff for the A's. I mean, first of all, the Joe Lacob deal, and then it's supposedly Reggie Jackson came in after that with another $25 million, $205 million offer. But Selig's like, no, I'm going to stay with Lou Wolf, my guy, his fraternity brother at Wisconsin. And then he also blocked Steve Schott's move to Santa Clara. Like he was fully on board. He was trying to build a stadium at Levi Stadium where it is now. And Steve Schott was all about that. And that got shut down by Bud Selig too for territorial rights. So it's kind of interesting how Bud Selig's fingerprints he's a big reason why they're still stuck in the Coliseum, it sounds like,
Yeah. So it goes back to Joe Lacob. Lacob saying that Selig yanked the team from me. Why did he yank the team from me? Well, he knew Lou Wolf. Lou Wolf had been hired as a consultant under the Schott ownership, requested by Bud Selig. And why Lou Wolf? Well, Lou Wolf and Bud Selig were in the same fraternity at the University of Wisconsin. So I said, okay, so it's Lou Wolf and John Fisher. So Lou Wolf figuring, okay, he's my frat bro. He's going to take care of us. So if we want to move to San Jose, we could do it. Well, no. So Bud Selig blocked any move to Santa Clara, any move to San Jose because of territorial rights. He bought into what the Giants were saying, that we own the territory, which is kind of fishy. And Jerry Reinsdorf said that shouldn't even happen. Bud is wrong and Rob Manfred is wrong.
Joe Lacob called it a screw job. Yeah.
Called it a screw job. You're absolutely right in this chapter. So, A's fans are not big fans of the League because, Schott wanted to move to Santa Clara where the 49ers are now. And that was nixed because of territorial rights. Lou Wolf, the frat bro, wanted to move to San Jose, and that was nixed because of territorial rights. And it could have gone to Lacob, the team. Instead, it went to Wolf. Bud Selig's fingerprints are all over this issue with the A's not having a ballpark. And I would contend now that they made a major mistake by not allowing the A's to move to the South Bay, whether it was Santa Clara under Schott or San Jose under Wolf. And now that property isn't necessarily there, but you wonder if Fisher strikes out at Howard Terminal, if Major League Baseball and the A's would reconsider A, the Coliseum, and B, San Jose somewhere. I mean, maybe the property isn't projected exactly right now down there, but there might be room elsewhere in the South Bay. So, that's where the big money is. That's where the bigger companies are.
Yeah.
And it just the whole Las Vegas thing just is I think a big hoax, a big ploy, and I don't think they'll ever move there.
Yeah.
And these parallel paths, bunch of nonsense. It's what you do in ownership 101. It's what Reinsdorf, we spoke about him, did to get a new stadium in Chicago. He threatened to move to Tampa Bay. Everyone threatened to move to Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, yeah.
So, and then finally Tampa Bay gets a team, but they still don't have a stadium. Just like the A's, the two worst in the majors. But it's just a big problem. And the Coliseum, it's not viable, but whose fault is that? It's the A's and it's Major League Baseball because Anaheim is just as old. It could have been that. It's the city council's fault, everybody's fault. But the city council and the mayor have done more for A's ownership than they ever have in the history of these relations. So
in the past couple of years, you mean, right? In this Howard Terminal negotiation?
Right. Yeah. They've given more and they've conceded more to the A's than any other, former political group in Oakland history. So So the A's have no excuse if they went to Vegas. That means they were not interested all along. Yeah. I mean, the city of Oakland has budged tremendously to make this happen, and they okayed $13 billion project. They okayed $1 billion stadium. They've okayed it, and all these votes along the way, they've checked off on it. So I imagine they will when this last approval is upcoming, before the end of the year. And when that happens, if Fisher says no, then it's on him. He was never interested. It was just a bunch of baloney, and he picked Howard Terminal knowing it would fail. So, and then it's time to get new ownership, because at that time, A's fans are protesting right now. They're not going out there. The product has been better. They've been better than the Giants in the last month, without anything to do with ownership, because ownership has done everything it could to alienate the A's fan and ask him or her not to come out to the Coliseum to support the team. There are plenty of A's fans out there. I consider them, the best fans in the majors, because of all they've gone through and all they've overcome and endured, and all the nonsense with ownership over the years. And, they're to a large degree still faithful.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me, it's just when you shared that Lacob story, I just couldn't think like, oh my gosh, like what could have been. And just the whole way it went down. I mean, I heard Lacob say, I was waiting for a call on the golf course, and then it went 4 days, and they literally, it sounded like Selig was shopping Fisher's term sheet around and say, hey, who can match this? And then they found Fisher with the money. So here we are. But anyways, you probably got to get out of here pretty soon, I assume. But let's do a couple minutes of just kind of previewing what you're expecting this weekend. I haven't seen any probable pitchers for the A's and Giants this weekend, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it's like the A's are kind of on this trajectory up, and the Giants are kind of on this trajectory down right now heading into this weekend.
Yeah, it's amazing how. I wouldn't be surprised if the A's run all over them over these 2 days. And how bizarre is it that there's no Friday game? I mean, Friday, that's the night that you're supposed to draw fans, right? That's okay. The end of the week, let's go to a ball game.
Yeah, so bizarre.
They have a bye on Friday.
Yeah, the 2-game series doesn't make any sense for these Babe Ruth series for me at all.
Yeah. So
I think it should be 3 at each park. Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
And so they're both going in the same direction. They're both, right? Yeah. They're both sub 500 teams. A's have nothing to lose, so it wouldn't be surprised if they just, sweep, pull off a 2-game sweep, because they've been playing free and easy. The Giants have been very tight. They're making a lot of mistakes. They haven't won since the deadline. So, yeah, well, in the clubhouse, they're happy that Rodon and Peterson are still intact. They realized that Soto didn't arrive, and offensive help didn't necessarily show up, and the pitching staff isn't much better. So it's not a better team than it was before the deadline, as you mentioned. But so what are they playing for? Are they playing for themselves? Are they playing to win? I mean, they're saying the right things. Farhan Zaidi, Gabe Kapler, the pitching staff, the hitters, they're saying, yeah, we're in it, but are you in it? I mean, falling back every single day. And meanwhile, the A's know they're not in it. So they're free and easy. They have nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's, let's finish strong. Let's put up big numbers. Some of us are in arbitration. We'll get paid a little bit more. And you don't see many free agents around anymore. They traded most of the big names, or if not all the big names. So it's totally a different dynamic than we've seen. Because even last year at this time, both teams seem to be headed to the postseason. And so many times in their history, I go back, 1971, both made it to the LCS. And obviously the earthquake of '89. And in the early 2000s, both teams were very good simultaneously, all the way up until last year, same thing. And then the A's fell apart in the end, and then had the fire sale, and the Giants kept everybody. Buster Posey is not in the clubhouse, and that's a huge hole that they maybe haven't filled in the middle of their lineup. And Kevin Gausman is gone, and they replaced him with Rodon. That's been a good swap, but they didn't make any swap for Buster Posey. They didn't bring in any big hitter before the season.
And then the Brandons dropped off. I mean, both Crawford and Belt both dropped off this year pretty big, right? Yeah.
I mean, they had career years well into their 30s. And that goes for all of them, from Posey to the two Brandons. Even Longoria had a good year.
Yeah.
But now, father time and age and everything, it's so prevalent. And the fact that there is much time on the injured list as they are on the field, says a lot about the roster construction, and the fact that Crawford is out and they don't have a shortstop, and they have to trade for a minor leaguer with the Cubs just to throw somebody out there, a warm body, tells you all you need to know about their depth and their farm system.
Yeah. And I feel like, and it's wild. I mean, so they're about to play in a couple hours here. The A's are about to finish up in Anaheim, and then the Giants are trying to avoid their second consecutive 4-game sweep against the Dodgers since the break, which is wild. So it just doesn't seem. I wonder if I don't know. Like, do you feel like the whole Kapler, like the way that they micromanage and everything, it's good when you're winning, but it's also really bad when you're losing, kind of a thing? Like, do you feel like the players are maybe is it harder to buy into that, if you're not winning?
I mean, Kapler lasted 2 years in Philadelphia. He contended all the way up until the final couple of months, and then the teams kind of fell apart. And you give them a mulligan after 107 wins only so far, but now we're in the second half with only 2 months to go. And it's not just Kapler. It's not on him as much as it's on the players. I mean, no player. I don't think you can go up or down that lineup or the bullpen or the rotation and say, I'm having a better year than I did last year. I don't think anyone can say that. I mean, the two All-Stars were the two guys they got in the offseason, Rodon and Jock.
Yeah.
So what does that say? Well, nobody else kind of matched their the 2022 numbers, from OPS to ERA or anything. They've all had down years from last year. So I don't know how much complaining they can do, saying, well, you're hitting for me after 2 at-bats. Well, I just went 0 for 2 with a couple of Ks. Now, if I got a couple of hits, and Jock Peterson, by the way, buys into this totally. I mean, he's all aboard. He told me at the All-Star break, he's at the point in his career where he realizes the Giants put him in the best position to succeed, meaning virtually only against right-handed batters. And if a lefty comes in the 5th inning, he's out of there. The line changed. So he's fine with that.
Yeah.
He's very outspoken about that. You don't hear a whole lot of others, jumping on that bandwagon, because they all want numbers. They all want to get paid. They all want service time. They all want, the back of their baseball card to be more full than just platoon.
Yeah.
But as Jock Peterson told me at the All-Star break, he said, it's pretty cool to have a platoon player start an All-Star game.
Yeah. I love how he was saying that.
You just called yourself a platoon player? That's what I am.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember once I asked Tony Phillips, when he was playing with the A's, I went up to him and said, hey, Tony, I'm doing a story on platoon players. And he said, don't you cuss at me?
Yeah, it was like a swear word. Yeah.
So it's a little different.
It's changed. Yeah, it's changed. Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Well, thank you so much, John. I could talk about baseball forever with you, but thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. I just want to make sure everybody sees this on YouTube one more time. It's called Long Shot: Building Homes, Dreams, and Baseball Teams. Make sure to go check it out. Get it on Amazon. It's a great book. Thank you so much, John. I really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, a lot of fun, Alex. Thanks a lot.